In 1991, a civil war was raging in Tbilisi. I decided to visit Father Gabriel to seek spiritual guidance. Father Gabriel was an extraordinary monk. I visited him for the first time with Ketavan Bakari. We had 2 or 3 visits together. Later, Ketavan couldn't come with me, but I felt a strong desire to see Father Gabriel again. I thought to myself, what if he asks me, "Who are you? Why have you come?" I didn't even know how I would answer, or why I was going to see him at all. I kept questioning myself. Nevertheless, I went to the monastery to see him. I prayed at the door of his cell, but there was no response. I went down to the courtyard, sat on a bench, and thought, it's 11:30 now, and if he doesn't come out by 12, I'll leave. It means he doesn't want to see me. Exactly at 12 o'clock, I heard the sound of glass jars near the tower. Father Gabriel had come out and was tidying up something. I approached him and greeted him. "Peace be with you, Father Gabriel." He looked at me and said exactly what I had been thinking. "Who are you? Why have you come to see me?" I was stunned. I didn't even know why I had come. I couldn't move, neither forward nor back. It was as if I were nailed to the spot. Suddenly, he kindly addressed me. "Marina, sister and mother, welcome." I was so surprised. He even remembered my name. He invited me into his cell. It was the grim 90s. There was no electricity. In the cell, a tiny bulb barely glowed, making it hard to see anything, even Father Gabriel. He handed me a book, The Lives of the Holy Fathers, and asked me to read. I took the book, opened it, but could barely make out the text. It was almost impossible to read. Then something astonishing happened. It suddenly became very bright, as if a spotlight had been turned on. I glanced at the bulb, but it was still glowing dimly as before. I looked at Father Gabriel, who was sitting and engraving icons. I thought to myself, it must be him who is shining. It was a miracle. And without turning around, he nodded his head. From that day on, I couldn't stop visiting him at the monastery. Every single day. There was no money, unemployment was rampant, and I couldn't even afford bus tickets. I don't know how, but I managed to visit him every day. God helped me. He always gave his blessings and would say with precision, "A red car will come, get in, and it will take you where you need to go." And that's exactly what would happen. Those were dangerous times, with banditry everywhere. You could be killed or have your throat cut for nothing. But with Father Gabriel's blessing, I walked with hope. One day, I went to see him. At that time, instead of money, we had coupons. He told me, "Today you must leave by bus or you'll be killed." I was terrified, absolutely scared. I only had 20 or 30,000 coupons, which wasn't enough for a ticket. But there was no other choice. I had to follow Father Gabriel's blessing. I waited for the bus, and there were only 5 people at the stop. I started thinking about how to ask the driver for a favor. I was sure he would start yelling. I was very anxious. We reached Tbilisi and stopped at the station. I let the other passengers get off first, so I wouldn't embarrass myself in front of them. Then I approached the driver and handed him the coupons, all that I had. But he said, "An old man who just got off already paid for you." I was astonished. I didn't know any of the passengers, and there was no old man at all. That's when I realized it was Father Gabriel himself, and that he truly could perform miracles. I want to recall a funny story. One day, I visited him and noticed Marlboro cigarettes in the elder's cell, right there with Father Gabriel. Before I became a believer, I used to smoke a little, but by that time, I had already quit. When I saw the cigarettes, I was surprised, but I didn't feel like smoking. "Do you want one? I can give you a cigarette," Father Gabriel said. No, I replied. "Don't worry, I'll close the door and no one will come in. as if anyone other than Father Gabriel could enter and make me feel embarrassed. "No, I don't smoke," I answered. "It's good that you don't smoke, but it's not a big deal. The most important thing is to have love. Everything else is secondary to the Lord." Truly, we all went through the Academy of Love with Father Gabriel. That's how I see it. We were so young. Some people we liked and some we didn't. I think that's true for everyone. I remember the time of President Zviad Gamsakhurdia, the period of the Civil War. Society was divided, with people supporting different sides. It was a very difficult time. Through Father Gabriel, a great love entered my heart. And the amazing thing is, I didn't even have to work hard for it. Love simply blossomed within me, and it was beautiful. I loved everyone. You may be surprised, but I'm still that way. I love all people. My father came from a communist background, but he was very kind. However, when I started going to see Father Gabriel, my parents were scared and thought I would stay at the monastery, no matter how much they tried to persuade me. I had a very good relationship with my father, and we never argued or had conflicts. But one fine day, he started shouting. "You will no longer go to the monastery," he declared sternly. If I hadn't left the room, he would have punished me. He was furious. I was almost beside myself, thinking something was wrong with him. The next day he told me, "You are not going to see Father Gabriel." "I will always go to see him," I replied, and left the room. That morning, I went to see Father Gabriel. He was sitting in the courtyard by the cherry tree, engraving icons. As soon as he saw me, he stood up and greeted me warmly, with great love. "You've come, sister, mother," he said, embracing me. "How are things at home?" "Thank you, by God's grace. Everything is fine." "Are you not scolded for coming to see me?" I smiled, understanding what he was getting at. "Yes, my father is upset. He's a bit scared." "Pray for him. You have a very good father." After that day, my father began reading the gospel, even though before that he had never gone to church or lit a candle. Soon he passed away. Father Gabriel had forewarned me about this. I was at the monastery on Sunday, and my father passed away on Tuesday. When Father Gabriel accompanied me home, I felt that something would happen to me. My father was 68 years old. He was a very healthy man and suddenly died from a heart attack on his own birthday. Father Gabriel took me to the stairs and gave me a cross, saying, "You must place this in the coffin with the deceased. Here is an icon. Place it at his head, and here are some incense and wheat." He cried like a child. Later, Father Sava told me that on Tuesday at 11 a.m., Father Gabriel had woken up the entire monastery and announced that Marina's father had passed away. He served memorial services on the 1st, 3rd, and 9th days. I hadn't gone to the monastery at all, and no one even knew that my father had died. Father Gabriel sensed everything. One day, Father Gabriel said to me, "Russia has many problems, so the Lord sends many saints. In Georgia, there is a problem with love, a shortage. The Lord sent me to Georgia to preach love. The Lord has entrusted me with all of Georgia and half of Russia. I must preach love. You will live to see a unified Georgia. But as long as there is no king, without a royal throne, nothing good will happen. Then Georgia will shine from Nikopoli to Derbent." In the monastery of Olga, a Russian priest served. He was from the city of Mitsketa. During the Civil War, bandits broke in and killed him brutally. The memorial service was held at the Samtavro Monastery. Ketavan and I visited Father Gabriel. He said we needed to go down to the church. He stood in the middle, with Ketavan and me on either side. He began to cry and wail so loudly that we had never seen or heard anything like it. We wanted to laugh, but we couldn't possibly do so in his presence. We entered the church. Father Gabriel stopped and sat by the head of the deceased. He was shouting and sobbing at the top of his lungs. Soon, soldiers arrived, took the coffin, and carried it out to the hearse. We walked with Father Gabriel, who continued to cry without stopping. We reached the gates, and then the soldiers placed the coffin in the vehicle and drove away. We remained at the monastery. Suddenly, Father Gabriel, with a completely calm demeanor, turned to us and said, "The Lord does not like anything excessive." Smiling, we followed him. He taught us humility and restraint, but he did it in a way that we didn't realize at the time. He was a great teacher. When my father died, I wore black clothing for 40 days. "The black scarf suits you," Father Gabriel said. "But after the 40 days, mourning should end. You should not trouble either the deceased or the Lord." He gave me his blessing to remove the black clothing. He taught us in a very distinctive way, and we understood that it was essential to follow his guidance. He deeply loved the sisters of the Samtavro monastery. He often scolded them, but he also cherished them. I didn't understand how one could both love and fear someone, but that was exactly how I felt about Father Gabriel and Hegumena Ketavan Kopaliani. Whenever I was preparing to go to the monastery, I was uncertain whether I would be allowed in or not. What if they turned me away? I was always afraid. Not that I intended to cause trouble. I suspected that a layperson shouldn't disturb the monastery every day. It seemed inappropriate and disruptive to the nuns. Yet I couldn't help myself. Father Gabriel called Hegumena Ketavan the Mother of Georgia. I also believe that there is no other nun like her in Georgia. She is incredibly balanced, a true nun, much like the ones we read about in books. Father Gabriel referred to her as the Mother of Mothers. He also predicted that the Samtavro monastery would prosper and become the heart of Georgia. Father Gabriel did not consider himself a saint. On the contrary, he often said he was a great sinner, even though he sometimes mentioned that the Lord had sent him to preach love. He would say to me, "Mother Ketavan is like a saint. Don't you notice?" Father Gabriel had an extraordinary knowledge of the gospel. I felt he knew exactly what was written on each page. He himself said he had only completed 6 grades of school. We people have different understandings of what education truly means. "I will leave soon. I will die," he told me. "Father Gabriel, take me with you too." "Be quiet," said Father Gabriel. I was extremely afraid of the moment of death when the spirit leaves the body. I was pathologically terrified of it. One day, Father Gabriel said to me, "I am dying," and he gave me a piece of black velvet with an embroidered cross. "As soon as I die and my spirit leaves my body, cover my face with this immediately. I will rest now, so be attentive." I fell to my knees. "Lord, please don't let him die now. I beg you. Let someone from the sisters come. I don't know what to do." But Father Gabriel insisted, "Cover my face as soon as I die." I cried and waited for him to leave this world. I hadn't cried like that even when my father died. Then he got up and said, "The Lord told me that Marina is crying so much that he won't take me. Get up." Since then, my fear disappeared. A separate story is how Father Gabriel made Ketavan Bekauri and me carry the coffin back and forth. We would take the coffin from the cell to the church and then back again. In the end, we looked at the coffin like it was a toy, even though before we had been terribly afraid of it. Before, when I had to go to a memorial service and saw the lid of the coffin, I would feel very ill. Father Gabriel took away that fear. At the time, I didn't understand why he behaved this way. I didn't realize that he was strengthening me in this manner. He prayed for us. He was truly an amazing person.